I found out that I needed to have brain surgery pretty much within a month. And I was just kind of devastated. This took me out right in the middle of Zwift Racing League. You have to have brain surgery is never anything that you want to hear.
Hello and welcome to episode 83 of the Virtual Velo Podcast, the show that bridges the gap between athlete and avatar, keeping it real in the world of cycling esports. Well, the 2025 UCI Cycling Esports World Championship semi-finals are now behind us. I can't believe it. What a race. It was fantastic. Our guest today is on the start list for the live final. It's confirmed in Abu Dhabi later on in November, continuing her incredible streak of racing in every World Championship final. She's also the only American to ever stand on the podium, earning a bronze in 2023 on Zwift. She holds multiple USA Cycling Esports national titles as well. But Chris, I have to say, perhaps most impressively, she continues our unofficial streak of elite racers with PhDs. And she also raises the bar even higher by being a medical doctor. What more could you want? Before we bring Jacquie into the conversation, Chris, though you've been a little bit busy this week yourself, and I do indeed want to hear a little bit more about your night out in Manhattan with Sir Mark Cavendish and a few other cycling legends.
Yeah, I was rubbing elbows with some cycling legends. But the reason why I was there was actually for a really great cause. And that's the Star Track Cycling, which is a youth development program in New York City. And their mission is to empower New York City kids, many from under-resourced communities, through the sport of track cycling. And this program started about 20 years ago with just 6 kids at a velodrome in Queens, the Casino Velodrome. If anybody is from that area, they would certainly know. It's famous for having a hump at the last turn. I think it's like because the velodrome's been there for so many years and it's gone through so many revitalization projects, it's just like fixture. And now they offer 200 scholarships per semester for kids, totally free of charge, zero barrier program. It's pretty amazing. They have over 100 national champions. They sent 2 of their graduates to the Olympics last year. Like, this is a really amazing program and has such a significant impact on the future of American cycling. But it also attracts some really big names to the gala benefit that I attended. Like you mentioned, Sir Mark Cavendish, Sir Bradley Wiggins, George Hincapie, who I know, Emma, you have admiration for, as do I as well, Bobby Julich and Christian Van der Velde. And it was amazing to see them there because, first of all, they were hanging out with each other and joking around just like they were kids themselves. And then they were telling stories about how programs like Star Trek impacted their lives and how having a mentor and having a club and having something to belong to really guided their careers and their life trajectory. It was really, really great. So I urge anybody who's interested in supporting the program to go on to startrackcycling.org and give it a look. It's really a great program, and we certainly could use some more support for ground roots cycling in our country. That's for sure.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because every elite racer has got to start somewhere, and it's fabulous to hear that these programs exist and that riders graduate and go on to not just fabulous things in sport, but I think fabulous things in life as well. And I think there's that real relationship in terms of the background that sport gives you. Now, talking about elite racers, when we invite elite racers onto the podcast, we're always intrigued by their backgrounds and how they first found their way into cycling esports. Now, since this is Jacquie's second appearance on the podcast, listeners can, of course, always go back to episode 18 that was recorded by Chris and Jacquie in February 2023 after your bronze medal performance at that World Championships, and take a listen to that discussion that you two had. I think they can also hear about your 5 wins at the Chicago Tri, your 2017 ITU Age Group World Championship title, and even your international win in future problem solving. So that's a packed episode as well. It's a really fun listen, and I definitely recommend checking it out. That said, we are always fascinated by athletes who excel both professionally and athletically. Jacquie Godbe, welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast for the second time. Tell us a little bit more about your professional life to start off with, and how you balance being an elite esports racer with your career.
Well, thank you so much for having me for a second time. It's great to be back. I really do enjoy hanging out with people and talking about bikes. So this is a great opportunity. And for those of you that are going to see me on video and not just hear my voice through the podcast, you will be able to see my lovely radiology sweatshirt. I'm actually heading into lab after recording this. So I am an MD PhD. I'm completing my radiology residency in St. Louis, Missouri at Mallinckrodt Institute of Radiology. And so, my day job, I do both research. I do cancer research for multiple myeloma. Very briefly, I look at ways to make multiple myeloma imaging better. Right now, the best we have is to look at how much the cancer eats sugar. And what we're trying to do is really turn it towards, can we look at how much the cancer might take up the drug in the future? And this is a very interesting area of research. We're trying to do it with a lot of different cancers and really give us drug or target specific imaging such that there's less trial and error and we're able to give doctors better answers. When I'm not in the research lab, my other day job, so to speak, I am in my final year of general radiology residency. I get to graduate in June 2026, so very excited about that. And then I will be staying on to do an additional year of training in nuclear medicine. Again, a lot more cancer-specific imaging. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, to learn more about that. Throughout the times that I've got to talk with you, throughout the times, I've been, honestly with virtual cycling, starting in medical school, intern year, when I talked to you guys in 2023, I was still sort of early in this radiology process. I hadn't quite gotten my research feet under me. So, it's always really fun to come back to talk about what I'm doing, what next, and get to brag about some of the cool scientific work that we're doing as well.
So how on earth do you fit training and racing at an elite level as well?
I'm always still trying to figure that out. I'm always trying something new. I will say research does help. It's definitely got more flexible time such that I am able to, for example, take off and race at noon on a Friday when I'm on research. So my program director, while I've been in radiology, has been very flexible. The people doing my schedule, as long as I know sufficiently in advance, I'm usually able to put a research block or request a day off. It does get a little frustrating sometimes when races are announced at the last minute and I'm like, we already have our call schedule out. So there is always push and pull. But that's the nice thing about virtual racing, is that very often there are these one day, one-off commitments, and I do not have to commit the same level of travel and planning that I did when I was in my triathlon phase.
I was going to say, do you think that the fact that you are heavily involved in cycling esports and the demands of your profession and the demands of racing at an elite level in cycling esports allows you to do something that you wouldn't be able to do if you were in a different cycling discipline, say outdoors road racing?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I may have touched on this in my earlier podcast, but I fully anticipated that triathlon, my career as being able to do professional level athletics, was going to end as I entered my fourth year of med school. I really thought that was the end. I had a race planned in Florida, was just sort of tie up all the knots, be like, did it. I had a lot of fun. But now I have to go do a year of interviews where I fully expected to be traveling to at least 15 different cities for interviews. I expected that the demands of intern year, the demands of my residency beyond that, were no longer going to allow me to make these like 3-4 day trips. And then virtual cycling really took off and I was able to commit to a lot more, because now rather than committing 3 days, I could commit 4 hours. So that flexibility really enabled me to compete for these past 5 years. And that's been amazing. There's always a sense of like, oh, I wish I could do more. I wish I could do Sunday Race Club. I wish I could do the upcoming Echelon Racing League. I'm so happy to see that back. And looking at my schedule, I was devastated when I found out that I couldn't do the Tour of the Gila again. Like, that's been one of my very favorite races. So I will always wish that I could do more. But in the end, I'm really grateful for the opportunities I've had. And this has extended my career and my ability to, toe the line with these elite world-class women by over 5 years at this point. So it really is just a blessing, just a cherry on top, but I'm always going to be greedy for a little more.
Interesting that you said that, because you've obviously extended your streak again this year. You've made the finals. You're going to be in Abu Dhabi, but this one's different. It's special. Can you tell us why?
Yeah. So for those of you who do not know, last year when I came back from Abu Dhabi, I found out that I needed to have brain surgery, pretty much within a month. And I was just kind of devastated. This took me out right in the middle of Zwift Racing League. You have to have brain surgery is never anything that you want to hear, which we addressed in the earlier podcast. I found out that I needed to have brain surgery, pretty much within a month. And I was just kind of devastated. This took me out right in the middle of Zwift Racing League. You have to have brain surgery is never anything that you want to hear. You never want to get that call from your doctor being like, are you sitting down? I have something to tell you. But fortunately, I am really, really blessed. That is the one thing, coming from a radiology residency, coming from the hospital, got in with an excellent neurosurgeon. I got in with an excellent team. My program director, my research director, like everybody around me really closed ranks. I got a ton of support. My parents flew down for Christmas, essentially, to come and take care of me. And I had to recover. And so, now we've had this gap of about 10 months at this point. And my parents actually came back to support me for semifinals. So this particular semifinals race to me was all about coming back, all about exactly like you said, this second chance, I'm blessed to be able to do this. And it was made even more special that my parents, who hadn't seen me since supporting my surgery, were able to come and see me from like, wow, you were just in the hospital, to, you're not just healthy again, you're able to compete, you're able to pour your heart out and really just have this opportunity again. So it was special on a lot of levels. And I think, again, this is something that I could not do. And it was really just another chance, another opportunity to be able to qualify again, to be able to go and meet these racers again in person in Abu Dhabi next month is just a fantastic opportunity. And I'm really excited.
It's quite a story, Jackie. I'm having trouble processing it all. Having had some health issues myself, it really puts things into perspective. And racing seems like so far off in the distance when you're dealing with these things. What was going through your mind? Did you ever say to yourself, I might not make it through this thing?
There was a lot through my mind, and that is the blessing and the curse of being in the medical field. I was very lucky. I was able to race right up until the date of the surgery. I did the Zwift series right up until then, as well as their elite selection team race that they later broadcast. And that was great. There was no reason for me to stop right up until then. And then after, my doctors are like, well, you're allowed to walk. Like, don't do anything. And I was like, well, actually, what about biking? And they're like, no, you could fall hit your head. I was like, I have a trainer in my basement. Like, I don't think you understand. This is literally the safest thing I could do. So, it was hard to put away the idea that I want to race, especially, watching my close friends, my competitors continue to race through that season. But the goalposts changed, right? Like my goal became like, okay, we're going to do 10 minutes. We're going to do 25 minutes. We're going to do 30. And the goalposts were no longer a time. It was like, well, week by week, I would see like a 10% improvement in what I could do. And I think once you start seeing those improvements and you track that over time, you're like, wow, there really is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so by 6-8 weeks out, looking back, I was like, I really did just have to have patience with myself. And from there, I was like, okay, yeah, I can start looking forward. But it's really hard to go from one, I'm racing with the elite, to the next. Going to the end of the hall is rough.
I hear you say that the doctors told you could walk afterwards, because that's exactly what they said to me after I had my triple bypass a year and a half ago. It's a matter of expectations, but it's also a mentality that we have as endurance athletes. as competitors. Do you think that the strength, the mental resolve, what you learned through racing helped you get through this?
Absolutely. And I think that is actually one of the strengths of athletes as patients, and both from athletes that I have taken care of and from my own personal experience. And I think it comes back to you on many levels. So the first is just that you are used to, as an athlete, sort of plumbing the depths of what you're able to physically do. And wherever you are, whether, what you're able to physically do is a new personal best or an FTP test or, run a marathon, you're used to digging deep and finding that. So if you're in the hospital and the physical therapist says, I need you to get to the end of this hall, you will find it in yourself to do that. The other weapon, I think, really that, at least to me, helped me in the hospital was I came in at full fitness. And this is actually something I did a lot of in-depth research. I was like, I know I have to have this surgery in a month. What is the best way for me to come in? Do I need to taper? Should I treat this like a race? Should I treat this what is there? And for a lot of these surgeries, we actually encourage our patients to get in as best shape as possible. So as an athlete, if you come in with that cardiovascular endurance, if you come in with that muscle, you're protecting yourself. And it actually helped me because even if you're sitting there and you're going to be in bed, if you're going to be very limited, your body can use that as backup, and if you come in with fitness and you lose 10%, you lose 20%, you lose 50%, you've still got that reserve that helps you get through. And so from my personal experience, I was up and walking, day 2, because of where my tumor was, it was right on top of my optic nerve. And so I had a lot of inflammation, I had double vision, I couldn't see very well, but I had a lot of leg strength. So when physical therapy came in and they're like, can you stand on one leg? Can you go upstairs? I was like, I can't see 10 feet in front of me, but you want me to do anything with my legs? It's here. And that extra stability actually gave me a lot more freedom. It got me up and moving faster. So I think that is a unique power of athletes. And we forget that because we're always saying our goal is to complete this race. Our goal is to do this. And it's that baseline level of fitness you have is so protective, and I think we're learning now for our more delicate patients, for elderly patients, the patients that are going to be in the ICU, we're now looking with research at what athletes do. And we're saying, if we give our bedbound patients creatine, treat them like muscle bros, we're actually finding out we can reduce their muscle loss. If we get them up and moving more, if we get them to do weightlifting the month before their surgery, we get better outcomes. It's this sort of looking back and forth and saying, what if we make more athletes? We can get better health outcomes. So I do want to throw that out there. It is horrible, just block in your mind when you're told you have to go through something like that. But at the same time, know that being an athlete, know that having that active lifestyle, that mentality, and even that just baseline fitness really, really does help you when you have to go through something like that.
Do you know, Jacquie, to start with, it's an amazing and inspiring story, and it's a phenomenal year you've been through. But I'll tell you something which is absolutely also amazing and inspiring. It's how you've taken a situation that has happened to you, and then you're looking at that situation and your recovery in relation to other people in the future, and what that means for medicine in itself, and that relationship between sport and, we were talking about sports and careers right at the top of the show, but you're now bringing in the fact that your reflection is about, sport and wellness and sport and recovery. And I just think it's just phenomenal. That's probably the only word I can think of. It's absolutely amazing listening to you. Thank you so much for sharing, honestly. And it is a little emotional, but talking about coming back, let's switch the focus of the comeback, shall we? Because that is one epic comeback. There was another epic comeback just a few days ago, because you had to beat nearly 130 riders to qualify for the finals in Abu Dhabi. You were 9th on stage 1, fabulous start. You were 37th on stage 2, which meant going into the final stage, you were in 27th place with 20 riders qualifying. You were 7 points behind the qualification. Then What a comeback. You took 15th place on stage 3 and you moved up to 19th place overall, and you qualified for the finals in Abu Dhabi. Just amazing. Did you have a plan? And did that plan work out? Or just how did you do it? Because it was amazing.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to answer your questions sort of piecemeal. 1, I had a plan going in. 2, that plan did not work after stage 1. And 3, my parents were in the room. So that actually became very important to me. So I'll just start at the top. I'll talk about what my plan was before everything kind of literally exploded and how we managed to put it back together. So the original plan was to take stage 1 as best I could. I am originally a triathlete and endurance athlete. So I was like, I can do a time trial. It's going to entirely rest on the points differential because, again, competing against 130 athletes, it's not how well I do individually, how many points I get. It's how many points are the people behind me getting. But I was very, very happy with the TT, very, very happy with 9th. I was like, that went exactly as I wanted, very happy. It was at that point when I was sort of warming down, my dad noticed, he's like, sounds kind of loud when you're shifting your gears. Is that normal? Are you just shifting under a lot of pressure? I was like, well, I'm kind of stuck on this hill. I didn't go to another thing. So it might just be that. Well, we start off stage 2. And my initial plan for stage 2 was to go for that sprint, be like, I'm a heavier rider, but we're just going to get the points while we can, leave nothing on the table. If I bomb out, I bomb out, but we'll just go for it. But the shifting was not smooth. So I got caught out real fast because I think everybody else had a very similar plan, go for the sprint. So I got kicked out the back while I was trying to figure out why, my pedals were jerking. I was not shifting smooth, got kicked out the back. No chance of making that first one at 100, whatever, where I was by the time I got my legs under me again. But I was like, we're just going to TT to the end. Maybe we'll climb back up into scoring position by the end. Maybe not. Technicals happen. But what you are not going to do in front of your parents is you are not going to give up. The race is not over till it's over. And it is bad sportsmanship for you to just be like, well, I'm out now, right? Your parents are watching, you give them a race that they're proud of. So I TT'd to the end, didn't quite make it into scoring distance, but I was top 30 by the end of that race. And I was like, okay, this is fine. I finished, I did it. And heading into round 3, I was like, well, that sucks. We've got to give it everything here. We've got to leave it all on the line. Every sprint is here. Got nothing left. If you get kicked out, you get kicked out. But if you don't try, you're going to regret it. And also, your parents are watching. Race like you want to make them proud. They taught you to leave everything on the line. They taught you not to give up. So, that really was going through my head. Make your parents proud. They get to watch this. So that was round 3, going for every sprint. And this is something I'd practiced. I'd timed, where am I fastest? Where is my weight going to help me? Where can I draft? And, I think it was on that 3rd lap when I got, top 10, and I saw those points flash up and I saw me get within striking distance. And I was like, yeah, I have a chance. Let's keep doing this, And my parents were, just so excited, so supportive. And it really meant a lot, like I said, to be able to do that with them there, do a race that made them proud, that was really standing on their values of don't give up, just give it your all, hope for the best. And again, just come back there healthy and be like, you guys have supported me this whole way. And so it just meant a lot to be able to do that, even though we had the technical difficulties in race 2. And then, of course, finish race 3, just happy. I made the bubble. I made the cutoff. I'm so happy. I turn on warm down. I kid you not, 5 minutes into warm down, I am pushing 120 watts. Explode. I have the pieces and it explodes. So I like to race on KNC gold chains. They're lovely. They never stretch. But when they fail spectacularly, and it failed spectacularly. So that race did not end a minute too soon.
Someone somewhere
actually took my bike into the shop that day and I was like, please make sure I did not destroy my bike by blowing this chain apart. And they're like, you're fine. Just for the love of God, next time change your chain,
before
you do these races.
But someone somewhere was telling you.
Thank you.
They were telling you that we'll blow the chain up after the event because we're giving her a shot.
Yeah. So we made it through. I have learned my lesson, and you know what? It was not mission critical. It made me reconsider some decisions and definitely deviate from the plan. But like in the end, I was able to do it and have a really good race that I was proud of.
What did you think of the format?
Oh, that was a brutal format. So definitely there were changes to the format sort of as we were preparing. And initially I thought we were going to start with the sprint one. Initially, I thought the sprint was going to be a flatter course, more akin to what we did last year, where it was like a loop, maybe a little bit of a downhill, but certainly not the 5% double climbs heading into each sprint. When I got dropped onto that course for my recon, I was just like, I have made so many mistakes in my life. But in the end, like, it's an exciting course. It's very challenging. It's a lot of climbing. Oh, that is a tough course, even to do as a recon ride at 90%. Like, it hurts. So I was very, very glad when they made the other change to increase the time between events to 35 minutes rather than 30. Especially given how long that second stage is. Coming off that second stage, in particular, that final climb, that 3 minutes of just VO2 max, once you've already kicked out your VO2 max, I was very grateful for the extra rest.
So you'll be heading back to Abu Dhabi, and it's your second time. I want to get some insight into how the first experience was. Being in Abu Dhabi, the live event final, being there with all the other athletes. And does having done it once make it easier the second time around for you?
First thing I want to say is I absolutely love meeting all these people in person. And I was really fortunate enough to get to do the Esports event as well in person in Singapore. And both times I was just struck by how easy it is to make friends with the other people. I have never seen them in person before. Most of the time, I don't even recognize their faces because they're virtual avatars, of course. You're only ever staring at the back of their head. And even if you're looking at them on social media, everybody looks a lot different when they're puffing their way through like a VO2 set versus fresh off a plane in regular people clothes. But it's so easy to make friends. Everybody really laid back. They're very friendly. You, of course, all share very similar common interest. And everybody's also very athletic. So it's very easy to be like, yeah, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's do this. So there's a high level of energy. It's very fun. The next thing is, I think the sport of doing it in person is still evolving. I definitely have things that I learned from last year that I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be bringing a lot more food and snacks with me to that sort of race night. Just because I think when I race in my basement, my kitchen is upstairs. I have my stashes of snacks and gummy bears, and it's so easy to have backup that like if I get hungry after the race, I can be like, oh yeah, I have leftovers in the fridge. I can make myself this. I can eat a whole loaf of bread if I want to. Whereas when you're in that real life setting, you can't eat, I can't go upstairs and, just eat 2 peanut butter sandwiches and a post-race smoothie while watching the men's race. I will pack a lot more food next time. Just, why not? If I have extras, it'll go home with me on the plane. Who cares? The other thing I think that's very, very different is, you don't necessarily have your home set up. So I'm used to my AC at this level. I'm used to my 2 fans in this position. I'm used to my screen here. This is my head setup. And you have to adjust. And everybody has to adjust. Certainly being able to bring your own bike and bring your setup with you does help. I did very much appreciate the fact that we were able to race on our own bikes last year. But again, you have to get used to a new trainer. Everybody has to do that. The one thing I love about being in person, and, I think the one thing that is going to continue to change, I love doing weigh-in protocols in person. It's so much easier. There's so much less stress of being like, okay, did I miss a spot? Was that exactly 30 centimeters? I don't know if I shared this the last time I was on, but in 2023, we actually shot the weigh-in video, got my weigh-in. I ate breakfast, ate lunch because it was a 2-hour weigh-in video at that point. and something went wrong with the upload. And at this point, I don't remember if it was, we accidentally only recorded 30 seconds or I forgot to move the scale, but something, and we had to reshoot it. And I was just so wrapped up in race nerves at the time. Like, I was paralyzed. I was like, I don't even know. Like, what do I do? I've just eaten a whole bunch and I've hydrated. I think I put at least 1.5 kilos just in terms of, preparing for the race. And I was just distraught. Like, is this going to be the end? And it was sort of that hyper emotionality that you get with pre-race nerves, that in retrospect was completely not rational. I'm like, where was my mind? The biggest concern for me was like, I don't want people to think I've cheated, right? It wasn't this is going to be the difference between me making the first round cutoff in the second. It was, I do not want the folks at Race Control to think that I'm trying to game the system, because I think my integrity is such a big part of not only my professional appearance, but I think my personality at this point. I really do want sportsmanship and that to really be at the forefront. Going back all the way to, I want to make my parents proud. I think for me, doing the weigh-ins in person, just removing that being like, I am here, there is no question about the integrity, there is no question that I am trying to game the system, that's a huge mental load off. And I really do appreciate it. I will be very interested to see what they do this year now that there are discussions about trying to use urine-specific gravity and other in-person sort of interventions to monitor and make sure that athletes are not dehydrating themselves. I think we're certainly going to be guinea pigs, but I think it may be annoying. I'll put it that. It may be personally annoying, but I'm grateful to see that the conversation is at least going on and we're at least beginning to brainstorm stuff to say, how do we protect our athletes and maintain the integrity of the sport? Because I think that's something that has plagued virtual cycling since the very beginning, is these concerns about integrity.
You touched on a lot of things there related to the weigh-in protocol and the topic of weigh-ins. The first being the anxiety that it produces. The second being that you thought that your race was over because you were 1.5 kilograms above your weigh-in weight. And then saying that you want to have the integrity. All of these things are basically what encapsulates why the issue is so front and center in the sport. So when you talk about that weigh-in protocol, the UCI has taken the step in the first time ever to actually put a weigh-in protocol into the regulations. They had at the management meeting in Kigali at the Road World, it was actually put in to include an educational component, a clear definition of unsafe weight cutting behavior and sanctions, and the 4-hour window in which there will be a urine-specific gravity test with a refractometer. And only after that is passed will the athletes then weigh in. They'll also be given a chance to, if they happen to fail that test, to rehydrate and weigh in, all under the supervision of UCI officials and health professionals. So from what I understand, within that 4-hour window, all the athletes are going to be under the control of the UCI. So it's not something like where if somebody weighs in, then they can go and just binge or rehydrate. I think that was one of the things a lot of people were concerned about. So you have a very unique perspective as a scientist, a physician, an elite athlete, and as notably perhaps one of the heaviest riders that's in the final. I haven't looked at everybody's weight, but you're an athlete who is really focused on strength as an essential component to your training plan. So considering wearing all those hats, what is your initial impression? You gave us some of it, but just give us a little more in depth knowing the exact protocol.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to split this into two discussions. We'll talk about the protocol directly and sort of the acute health concerns associated with that. And then I do want to reserve a little space at the end to talk about just sort of the long-term consequences and how it has affected me personally. So certainly with the acute protocol, you're absolutely right. I am still on the heavier side of the riders, and I have always taken a very conservative approach for this. I think the data supports that even moderate dehydration can really impact your cycling performance. So while I still do, and I think you have to compete at the highest level, consider and monitor my weight leading up to a weigh-in. When I say, it's like, I will delay my second cup of morning coffee until after weigh-in. I will have chocolate for breakfast rather than like a big bowl of oatmeal and strawberries, because like, there is a difference of 500 grams between those things. Like I will take what I'm putting in my belly, but not to the point where I'm sacrificing carbohydrates, not to the point where I'm going to be dehydrated. And certainly, what can I do 2 hours before weigh-in versus 40 minutes? But I do not think it's healthy for me, particularly now I'm post-brain surgery, to do things like sweat it out. That's something that I have never felt the pressure to do. There certainly is a pressure to just be at your lowest baseline weight. But again, sort of with my health struggles and everything else, that's something that I never felt that it was healthy for me to go beyond and lose that baseline weight. I think we even talked, Chris, earlier about, I went and got a DEXA scan to make sure that my bone mineral density was fine, given the prevalence of extremely low bone mineral density and osteoporosis hitting, elite female cyclists by the time they're 30, right? Like that was me. And I was like, oh my goodness, broken hips, we see those, and that can, not only end your career, those can end your life. So there is a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety, and everybody sort of has to pick what is appropriate. And I think on one end, I'm coming from I don't want to see dehydration. I don't want to have too much dehydration because it will hurt my performance. I don't want to sacrifice my muscle mass because it will hurt my performance. But then also, if it's a physician, I say, I don't want you to get so dehydrated that, your potassium channels cause your heart to stop. And that is certainly something we see in other weight cutting sports, such as wrestling. Like we do have these very real case scenarios where we have brought out fatal heart arrhythmias due to cutting behaviors. And I think that is the most urgent, scary thing that the UCI is trying to prevent. Say like, no, like we have to have some guidelines. And that's really where I think they're starting to look to in terms of like, what is wrestling doing? What are these other weight cutting sports doing to ensure the immediate safety of their athletes? Now, as we sort of pivot long-term health protections, and I think this is another very important conversation to have within cycling right now, particularly women's cycling. What are long-term health consequences and what is long-term healthiest for an athlete? So we've already got these studies showing that we're getting osteoporosis in professional cyclists before 30, and that's horrible. But where, what else happens beyond that? What happens when you're disrupting hormonal axis for that long? What does that mean long-term for your pancreas, your blood sugars when you're in your 30s and 40s? And a lot of it boils down to what is your long-term health? What is your relationship to long-term health with your cycling? And this is where it gets very personal for me. So in the US, I think we can all acknowledge as a whole, we have a difficult time talking about weight. Particularly when you view weight through the lens of a professional athlete, it can very often be viewed as a mark of personal dedication, how disciplined are. And so there's always that pressure of like, well, 1 kilo in the long run isn't going to affect me. And ultimately, as I think I said at the beginning of the show, I was dealing with these issues for many years. I was unable to have a period. I tried everything. I actually put on 20 pounds at one point, trying to be like, okay, maybe I am too skinny. Maybe I do work out too much. I did put on 20 pounds and the period never returned. But it was sort of this lack of literacy going on with my doctors, who both told me I was at once too fat. I had that BMI just a hair over 25. And they were like, it's PCOS. And, you have a bigger waist. And the other doctors being like, well, you've always had this hypothalamic amenorrhea, the female athlete triad, now more commonly being referred to as RED-S. Like that's the reason you never have a period. You will never have a period. And, I was actually admitted to Mayo study, like being run by the Mayo Clinic on amenorrhea in female athletes. It was not until I pushed my endocrinologist to do the brain MRI to order these additional tests, again, based on something that I had seen only in my capacity as a radiologist when reading my own scan with one of my attendings that said, hey, I have a lot of fat in my belly, like inside my abdominal wall and nowhere else. This is super weird. That we were able to push for that testing. We saw the tumor growing in my pituitary, and we were like the lack of period wasn't due to being too fat or too skinny. It was due to this thing. And because we lacked that sort of like ability to have a discourse about weight, we had that lack of ability to have a discourse about what is healthy in elite cycling, even within the medical system, with somebody like myself who should be, knowledgeable and able to advocate. Like we missed that, and that is a diagnosis that could have potentially come years before. So now we're saying, what other things are we missing? Young elite athletes, and there are a lot that are a lot more common than what I have. So osteoporosis being number one. If we are suppressing estrogen in women, we see really early onset heart disease. And I think we've seen very invasive vascular procedures in young athletes in professional cycling. We've seen cardiovascular events in Ironmen, like world medalists. So there are a lot of very, I don't even want to say rare at this point. Like there are a lot of very real health consequences from low body weight. And we don't even know where that cutoff is right now. And while in women, we have traditionally said, oh, well, a period means you're healthy. Well, there are a lot of reasons to not have a period, ranging from the type of birth control you're on to other things. And we really don't have that knowledge to say, long-term, this is safe, long-term, this is healthy. And when we as a sport want to have professional athletes, want to have these lifetime people, we need to care for their health. We don't want to lose them 1, 2, 3, 4 years because of something that we could have controlled. I think this is going to be something that we need to continue to have very real discussions about. I mean, I think if we look back and know that there was a time where in professional cycling, we didn't wear helmets, and now that's inconceivable to us. Now we need to say, all right, our science is evolving, our understanding is evolving. What are the short term? Again, going back to we do not want a fatal cardiac arrhythmia. We don't want anybody fainting. What are the short term health safety procedures we can put in place? And how do we look at that medium to long term as well and make sure that we have professional careers and people who are able to mentor the next generation?
Like, I love that I asked this question about weigh-ins and you just gave me a very long and thought out answer. And not once did you discuss the fairness of it. Your outlook is health, and as it should be, right? But unfortunately, that's only a small part of the reason why we have this policy. It's because there are people, like you say, that they're doing sweat outs. There are people that are coming to the weigh-in dehydrated to get a performance advantage. Now, is that something that you see as an issue? And if so, is this policy striking a balance between the health aspect and also providing a level playing field?
So it's really difficult to mention. I think there is always going to be an aspect of how do you game the system, right? And that exists in many, many parts of sports, even outside of esports. Even within esports, there are ways to game the system that haven't been made illegal yet. And the rule set is always sort of chasing them, right? I think we've seen the sticky watts. We've seen, do you have Vsauce up when you're racing? So there's always going to be a lag between what is legal and what gives you the edge. Again, for me, I think there is always a distinction to be made between what is healthy and safe for myself to do. What is pushing forward with integrity? Where can I go? And again, for many people competing at this level, now that esports is getting to the point where it is a viable career, where you can make viable, sustainable money on that, it's very difficult for me to say, no, you should not, seek every legal advantage in pursuit of making your career. That's what this is. I do not want to get between you and your paycheck, but I do think it is very important that you do it within the rules such as they are. And then it is the responsibility of the governing body making those rules to make sure that the athletes are protected, right? Because I think that's a story we've seen again and again within sports is sort of higher ups, the people who are marketing say, well, these young 20, 30-year-old athletes, they're great. They're willing to put themselves through hell and back. They're willing to put everything on the line for their paycheck because that's what we need to do. They're willing to put everything on the line for pride and country and everything else. How do we put guardrails on to making sure that they're safe while they do so? And this is where the anti-doping protocols come in, right? And those have always, again, been a step behind sort of the next era of innovation. So I really do think it comes down to the governing bodies saying it is our job to protect the wellness of our athletes. That is integral to sports. Sports and athleticism is wellness at its core. And if we want to be sustainable, if we want to be responsible, that's what we need to do. It's going to be a continuing conversation. I really think it needs to be at the level of the governing body, and they need to keep an ear to the ground to what we're saying, to what we're doing, and ultimately the field of medicine as it evolves with our understanding of what is healthy and acceptable.
Jacquie, we talked about the UCI as a governing body, but there are also the national federations. If young riders, so at the age of 14, 15, 16, I know in the UK this takes place, those young riders are invited into, if they are showing talent, are invited into educational programs. And those educational programs are about weight and health. They're about doping, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And they really set a tone and a culture of expectation about what the National Federation expects from its athletes, and how it also expects its athletes to behave as they are young athletes growing up in that sport. Is it time that esports athletes were invited into those programs?
I would absolutely love to see more education right now. So as a representative of USA Cycling, we did have to go through safe sport training. And part of that does include how to deal with young athletes, what is bullying, how to comport yourself. And ultimately, it does include a section on what is healthy and what constitutes weight-based or abusive coaching. I would have loved to have more of that when I was that age. Fortunately, swimming is not typically considered a weight-cutting sport. So I was largely spared that when I was probably at my most impressionable years. But I think by and large, there still is a culture. And, particularly if you come to esports sideways from another discipline, you're coming from triathlon, you're coming from running, you may not have gotten that education from your cycling community. So I think we absolutely should be pushing more education. Like I said, particularly in the US, we have a lot of difficulty talking about weight. We have a lot of difficulty talking about health and what is normal. So, if we can just talk more about saying, this is good, this is normal, please, let's throw sportsmanship in there. I think that is absolutely an important component, because you also need to respect your opponent's health, right? You need to respect your teammates' health. And very often, once we talk about these difficult issues, like eating disorders, like weight loss, sometimes you need a friend, you need a teammate, you need somebody over your shoulder, you need your coach to stand up with you, because it's so difficult to do yourself.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And when you get older, menopause in sport is another great conversation, I tell you. You don't want to know what that hits and how your power drops out the bottom of your feet. But again, I laugh and I joke, but it's exactly the same. Having teammates around you and people of a similar racing age is absolutely crucial to have those conversations, because we don't have those conversations outdoors, so to speak. Some of those things are still frowned upon and they shouldn't be. And it's just so important we just keep talking and keep talking and keep talking.
So I actually want to throw out a huge shout out to my teammates at Ceres and Riot, because we actually have a health thread on our Discord for this reason. And again, I love Dr. Jen Real. So she is our team coach. She's also a physician. At this point, we have multiple physicians on that team, but we have this health thread specifically to talk about this. And we have racers everywhere from very early in their racing careers, up and coming 20s, to perimenopausal, postmenopausal women. So that is on our thread. We have talked about birth control. We've talked about period management. We've talked about perimenopausal management, and having that space has been so important. And I'm going to be completely honest, it has helped me through my health issues. It's helped me emotionally just be like, wow, I'm not alone, plan for my future, when I do hit that age. But it's also engendered a very deep sense of loyalty and community, knowing that these people have my back, and just be like, I can talk about this with you. So again, we've talked about short-term health consequences, long-term health consequences, but now we're also building community, right? And I think that is the ultimate end goal of every cycling organization, is to have a strong community. That's why we have these grassroots organizations, teaching kids track cycling is to build a community, is to build the next generation of leaders. So ultimately, I think having these conversations, opening it up, fulfills everything that they could want. Like, there really are no downsides. They're just occasionally a little bit awkward and hard to start.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch the conversation a little bit, and because I am mindful of the time, and I know Chris will be keeping a watch on us. But staying on governance, really, but bringing it a little bit closer to home. You are one of 5 USA women who have qualified for the World Championships. In fact, 50% of the women's final is going to be made up of 2 countries, 5 riders from Sweden and 5 riders from the USA. It's a phenomenal achievement. And we talked a lot about Sweden last year, so we're going to be talking a bit about the USA this year. Yourself, Elise Gallegos, Kristen Kolczynski, Nicole Mayer and Alexei Snova have also qualified for the final. Have you, or will you, be in touch with your teammates to build that rapport, or perhaps to discuss strategy and tactics?
So we already have a group chat going on Instagram. I think that happened within 15 minutes of the final, as soon as everybody finished texting out their parents and everything else. And last year, I looked at the Swedish riders. They had their team dinner together, everything else. I want to do that this year. I think Team Sweden has had so much success building their virtual cycling community. And also, a team dinner just sounds like a lot of fun, right? Like I've said, I love these people, already have so much in common with them when I meet them. That just sounds like a lot of fun. Let's learn. Let's meet up. So I think as we get closer to, once we start to finalize travel plans and everything, again, if it works out and we have buddies on the flight, this is great. But once we get travel plans set up, I think that is something we will definitely try to imitate Sweden, is get some Team USA pride going, invite Hayden over from the men's side, because, the more the merrier. Also, he's a cool dude, like him. So let's get all of us together in one room, have dinner, chat, have fun, and create some connections that hopefully continue to stand the test of time.
I for one, am going to be glued to the screen, and not just because I'm commentating. I'd be glued to the screen if I wasn't. Final question from me. You are talking about what you and those other 4 women have done in terms of starting to create that community. Has USA Cycling been in touch, or will they offer any support to the team in preparation for the finals?
So it's been extremely different year to year. This year, all of us qualifying for semifinals received kit, which was fantastic, phenomenal. I think, certainly if you do want to promote USA Cycling as an organization, you need to have every rider in kit. And particularly in women's cycling, particularly in women's virtual cycling, there are just barriers in place. So every barrier you can knock down to get more people represented, more people in, I'm for it. I really, really hope that having so many people qualify continues to sort of raise virtual cycling up in terms of what USA Cycling is seeing. And I certainly hope we get somebody else on the podium this year. I mean, obviously the goal would be for Team USA to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the women and just knock it out of the park. But I think it's a process, like every other discipline, we're still very young, we're still learning. But I think all of us are going to go out there and fight for recognition, for community, and really to just continue to evolve this sport and push it into a form that we're all happy with and can really stand on its own.
Yeah, it's really great that you all got kits, because I know that hasn't been the case in the past. That's really great. But have they contacted you? Have they provided you any performance support? I know you've had a DS in the past. Has there been any organization as far as USA Cycling?
Not yet. We're still waiting for MyWhoosh to contact us, really. So in the past, we have had DS. A lot of these meetings have taken place much closer to the race. So I think they're still waiting on the official invites, making sure. And again, I haven't followed the bonus invites to see if anybody else gets sort of swept up in those +3 decisions, because I think that would certainly change their calculus. We'd love to see another guy on the men's side. We'd love to have number 6 women in, right? So we have not gotten further clarification from USA Cycling yet, but I also have not gotten my tickets to Abu Dhabi. So I think there's still a lot of waiting, let's see what happens, let's not exclude anybody, very cautious approach.
There's still 7 days to go.
Yeah.
I like that you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. That's a good way to go. Jacquie, you've been such a really wonderful guest, and we've really gone into the weeds with a lot of these very tough topics. I wouldn't have expected anything less from you. Extremely insightful. But before we wrap up, we always end with a big picture question. So we're going to pull it out a little bit here. With all of your experience and perspective, you've been in the sport since its inception. Where do you see cycling esports headed now, say within the next 5 years? And where do you see yourself in that future?
Oh, that is a big question, but I like it. Within the next 5 years, I really hope that we start seeing more of these in-person events. And I would love to see more in-person, and this is just speaking from the United States perspective, because I think that presents unique geographic challenges. I cannot travel easily to LA for a national championship. I would love to see more in-person state championships, national championships. Can we have other championships that just aren't UCI? I've seen a lot of other national federations begin to do that, and it looks a lot of fun. I think that will go a long way towards building the community. That is something that I really enjoyed doing with my triathlon team back in Chicago. Having the virtual cycling component be part of indoor triathlons, but still being there, still seeing people, still very drop in. I don't have to get my bike ready. So that is where I want to see it in the next 5-10 years. I want to see integration of in-person and virtual events. I don't want to give up my virtual events. I love them. I love being able to race on such short notice and get upstairs to my kitchen for well-deserved ice cream afterwards. But I would love to see more of these in-person events. Now, where will I be? That's an open question. Like I said, I've got my 1-year follow-up visit coming up soon. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. They're going to say, "You're perfect. Here's your gold star. Stick it right on my forehead. We'll see you in 6 months." And then I really, really want to return to USA Nationals this year. Very excited to see it on Training Peaks. The fact that Indy Velo got associated with such a big platform and got several big racing leagues. I'm very excited to see it. I'm trying to learn their racing physics. Just did my first race on it on Tuesday night. So I am so excited to be going into this USA Nationals for the first time in 3 years with a full bill of health. No COVID, no post-surgery, nothing. Get to race against those other women from Team USA. And really give it my all. I'm so excited for that. Beyond that, I want to continue to help build the sport. In the next 5-10 years, I'm going to become an attending physician. I'm going to hopefully be starting my own lab and reaching new levels of responsibility and maturity in my professional career. I don't know what that means yet in terms of how I'll be able to continue to carve time out for this. But I do very much want to remain rooted in the community, in the building, because I don't think it's fair to say anymore we are in the nascent stage. This sport is starting to have roots, it's starting to have teeth, it's starting to have legacy, but we're still very much in the early childhood stages. So I want to be part of that, whether that's commentating, whether that's helping coach, whether that's continuing to compete. I want to keep my hands in, and I want to make sure that it grows in a responsible way that we're all happy with and that continues to build community and hit all those aspects that we've said the national federations want: physical health and community health. And so we'll see what the future brings in terms of how I'm able to keep my contact, but I certainly plan on doing something, staying with it. You guys are too much fun. I can't turn away now. I really do have a lot of fun.
Well, Jacquie Godbe, thank you so much for joining the Virtual Velo podcast today. Good luck on November the 15th. We will be cheering from you so much quietly from the commentary box. But it has been such a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you for having me. Like I said, I really do enjoy hanging out with folks, especially you guys. You guys are great. And I love having these conversations.
Well, thank you. You can subscribe to the Virtual Velo podcast on your favourite podcast provider and, of course, on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma. And you can follow Chris at the Zamunique. You can catch up with me putting words to the action this weekend on the final round of the Mountain Bike Eliminator World Cup from Barcelona on Saturday. And of course, that's followed by the My Wish Sunday Race Club on Sunday. Head over to thezamunique.com and please also become a member of the Escape Collective to join the conversation and support independent cycling esports journalism. We will have some more interesting guests from the world of cycling esports joining us. We are waiting to hear from a few others from those semi-finals. Keep your ears and eyes peeled for who's on next. But we do have Project Echelon's Eric Hill joining us to share that announcement about the move to Training Peaks Virtual. And we're excited to see who will be here next. Thank you to Jacquie Godbe for sharing her unique perspective, and to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Chris will always remind you to take care of your heart. Get a coronary calcium scan should you think you need one. Me, as ever, take care, ride safely. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.